I know you're so mad and angry you can't sleep at night because what's happening to people of color just isn't right. But can I have your ear, not one but two? Just for a moment, I want to speak to you. My brother, my sisters, all over the land, we can improve our situation with a better thought out plan. Violence only brings looting, destruction, arrest, and more. What are you going to do when there's nothing left and you need to go to the store? Like an artist to a canvas creating a work of art, we all have the right to express what's in our hearts. Please think before you act when taking a stand, because instead of progress, you will only anger the man. I know you hurt thinking that your child could have been in his place, can't breathe with a knee to the neck, with concrete in their face. Staying alive each day, the struggle is real. The anger, hatred, vengeance, the tears I feel. Corona has businesses closing one by one. So why burn down what's left of your community, son? Scream, shout, cry as you must. But destruction isn't profitable, for in God we must trust. Taking matters into our own hands results in actions of vengeance, not love. For real change, we must seek the man above. Peace can bring progress if we are united in our stand. But I know you want to get back any way that you can. I know your patience is growing weary of seeing change undone. But times have changed since we sang, "We shall overcome." Our ancestors humbly prayed day and night, even when they could not see emancipation within their sight. Faith over fear is what I'm asking of you. Put down the guns, the bats, and the torches too. I know you want to be heard, but this is just not the way. Progress takes time. Pray without ceasing every day. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Thank you for lending me your ear. Now let's take our problem to the King. That was Better Way by Everett Maxine. Hi, I am Everett Maxine, and I would like to thank you for listening to The Absence of Her. Please remember to like, follow, and most importantly, share. Purpose is defined to be the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. God has created each of us with a purpose. Passion is a strong and barely controllable emotion. Passion is a word used to describe the suffering and death of Christ. Passion is a strong feeling of enthusiasm for something or about doing something. Passion is a strong feeling that causes you to act in a dangerous way. What is your purpose? What is your passion? For the majority of the first half of this great year of 2020, we have been responding to the dangers of the coronavirus. People trying to stock up on toilet paper, food, sanitizing supplies, and complying to the stay-at-home orders. Children at home from school, parents working from home, and some tensions rising from being in close proximity all day, every day for weeks. Parents' frustration levels increasing as they take on the role of teacher-tutor, something everyone is not called to do. Then the massive amount of job cuts and business closures as the grocery and utility bills continue to rise. There's very little room left for patience or understanding. Folks protest whether to wear a mask or not, keep their businesses closed or not, threatened by fines if they do not comply. On Memorial Day, May 25th of 2020, a day we honor and remember those who died serving in the United States military, a police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was holding his knee on the neck of George Floyd until he uttered his final pleas to breathe and lost consciousness. Even in that moment, the officers continued to hold him to the ground for 3 more minutes, then lifted his lifeless, limp body onto a stretcher. Racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race, based on the belief that one's own race is superior. Racism is a person's social and moral traits are predetermined by his or her inborn biological characteristics. I am a 39-year-old Black woman born and raised in Southeast Texas. For my entire childhood, I believed racism did not exist. If someone said they had been mistreated because of the color of their skin, I didn't believe it. I thought that person had done something to cause the trouble and the punishment was warranted. I was born and raised in a town that you knew which race lived where. I had the privilege of spending majority of my junior high and high school years in honors classes with very few Black students. I never thought it made me better than others, but it sure did make me blinded. Understand, I'm not saying that I felt I should have looked at my lighter skinned classmates as different from me, but I needed to be aware, woke as they say, to the fact there are people that do not see my Black as beautiful. That no matter my grade point average or level of intelligence, I would always be seen as beneath them. My grandmother never talked about slavery or oppression to me, so it left me living in a bubble of my own ignorance. It left me living in a bubble of denial that did not prepare me for what I had faced March 1999 as an 18-year-old teenager 2 months from graduation. For my entire school years, I had never rode the public school bus. My senior year, I would be riding the bus with my brother, but I was an oddball, a nerd, not a social butterfly, so I always sat up front, holding my backpack, as my brother comfortably cut up in the back of the bus. But one afternoon in March of 1999, I went to get on the bus and someone was in my seat. Uncomfortable to sit in the back, I told him to move. He refused. We shoved each other and had words. The ag teacher stepped on the bus, who was doing bus monitoring, and said, "Girl, you going to jail." I was already exiting the bus as the bus driver had asked. I was working part-time as a car hop exonic and entered the science wing of the school to call my parents, so I would not be late for work. The halls were empty. The school was empty. From behind came a security officer who asked where I was headed, and I calmly turned around, faced him, and said I was going to call my parents to pick me up so that I would not be late to work. I then turned around and kept walking. And as I got almost close to the front of the security office, I was tackled and handcuffed from behind. Still with my backpack on my back containing AP books, with my hands cuffed tightly behind my back, the pain increased when I walked because the backpack was now hanging from the handcuffs, causing them to dig further into my skin. The officers had no empathy for me as he dragged me into the security office. I was terrified. I had never been arrested before. Surely This was a mistake. I was an honor student. The most I ever did was skip a few classes. I tried to explain they were making a mistake. I asked to call my parents, and they just kind of laughed off my request. One of the school principals arrived, and I asked him to speak on my behalf, but he declined. Said it was out of their hands and that I was a threat and had caused a disturbance on the bus. I was in shock. No one knew where I was. I had complied and got off the bus without making a scene. We didn't have a fight. No property on the bus was broken. But here I was, a few months before my high school graduation, in handcuffs, with tears streaming down my face. I was then humiliated as I was escorted outside to the patrol car in handcuffs, in front of any students and teachers that remained on campus. Placed in the back seat of a patrol car, I was taken to the sheriff's station. I was fingerprinted, searched, and placed in a freezing cold holding cell. Not aware of the time, but it felt like forever. It was a white male security officer that had handcuffed me, but two other security officers that escorted me in the patrol car to the jail at the sheriff department were both minorities, one Hispanic, the other black. It was late evening when I was released. I felt so much shame, frustration, fear, disappointment, so many emotions. Although the Hispanic security officer tried to get a judge that would show immediately, the black security officer had wanted just the opposite. He tried to get a judge that he knew was hard on students, and he knew she would be unavailable, so I would have to remain in a jail cell all weekend. I kept rewinding the chain of events in my mind. Did an argument equal to time in a jail cell for a high school honor student? I was relieved to finally be released back to the custody of my parents, but alarmed when my mother told me that when the black security officer entered the waiting area, he questioned why they were there. Both of my parents were well known by people of all races in our small town. And then the most hurtful, disturbing words proceeded from his lips. Words that if I had been my parents would have angered me to the point they would have had to handcuff me and place me in the cell next to my child. The officer told my parents, had I known she was your daughter, I would not have treated her that way. He had no idea how that small statement said so much about his bias toward the students at the school. I was ashamed, exhausted, hurt, and stuck at home because I was suspended for a few days because of the arrest. I did not even want to return to school. What would others think of me? I did not want special privileges because of my parents, but the officers to acknowledge I was not troublemaking student that they tried to make me out to be. I wanted my parents to be enraged as I was about my mistreatment because of their assumption about the little black girl they saw before them. I still worked my hours at Sonic, and to my surprise, some of my classmates from my honors classes, along with their parents, came to tell me just how wrong I had been treated. That my parents should have rocked the boat and taken action against the school district. Even my physics teacher told me she heard me walking down the hallway and not giving the security officer any problems. I remained humble and happy for their support, but all I cared about was graduating and never looking back. The thing about a small town, you run into people you really do not want to see. As a car hop, I delivered orders to several people a day. And as I proceeded to take an order, there a black man sat, leaned back in his seat, with me unable to see his face. When I arrived to the vehicle, it was him. The anger and hurt rose up inside, and every part of me wanted to dump the order all over him. But I refrained. This man, my brother of the same color, had already tried to take my freedom. I would not allow him to take my job. The officer chose not to appear in court so that things would work out in my favor. But his actions did make me feel as if I owed him my gratitude because he wrongly judged me. All 3 security officers had mistreated me. But he didn't have the courage to say he was wrong. I would receive deferred adjudication, and the rest would no longer be on my record. I no longer felt equal to my peers. I lost the hope that if I performed well academically and stay out of trouble, that I was equal. Racism now existed to me. Although my record would be clear, I would be forever traumatized. I would feel uncomfortable for the remaining 2 months of my senior year, sitting in honors classes with students that probably would never feel my experience. They would never fear the stares I felt from them. They would never be bombarded with questions like I was. My parents didn't pursue the matter any further. The lack of action affected of how I saw my worth. Leaving high school, an elevation from childhood to adulthood, I was marked by the fact the brilliant brain I contained within me meant nothing as long as I was brown-skinned. Jesus was a perfect man, and George Floyd, imperfect as humans are. But when I saw his final moments, I thought about the crucifixion of Christ. As I began to watch the video of his murder, I paused and closed it. I didn't want to see. Over my adult years, I have been partial to what I read and what I view, even though those situations have an indirect effect on my life, especially as a person of color. This time I forced myself to watch, expecting the police to tase, shoot, or rough George Floyd up. But they held him down, the officers pinning him to the ground with his knee to his neck, and the officer had his hands in his pocket without a care in the world. As I heard Mr. Floyd beg for water, beg to breathe, beg for his mama, tears rolled down my cheeks. My body shook with anger and my heart hurt so bad there were no words to describe my emotions. The word talks about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Jesus walked the earth in flesh before he became spirit. Jesus' enemies hung him on a cross, and when he said he was thirsty, they offered him vinegar to drink. During the final moments of Jesus' life, his enemies surrounded him in disbelief of his worth. Jesus cried out and gave up his spirit. The earth shook, the rocks split, the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely He was the Son of God. George Floyd cried out, "I can't breathe," multiple times, but his enemies continued to pin him down. As some onlookers watched in judgment of that beautiful black soul, Good Samaritans recorded the heartbreaking murder. George Floyd cried out once again that he could not breathe, begging to stand. Then, before he lost consciousness, I believe he saw the angelic face of his mother as he called out, "Mama." As he gave up the fight, struggling to breathe, pinned to the ground by 3 police officers. At that moment, the world changed. Cries of injustice and protests for equality of Black lives rang out. Rioting and looting took place, and Confederate statues dismantled. The lives of people of color who died at the hands of police brutality were brought to attention in present news cycles. From state to state, people of all races exited their comfort zones to protest in the streets that Black lives matter, and that all lives cannot matter if Black lives do not matter. Those officers that took part of the murder of Mr. Floyd have certainly felt the movement of the world and their frustrations with the police using their position to mistreat the citizens of color. The officers now know George Floyd's life was worth so much, and surely he was chosen of God. Have you discovered your God-given purpose? What drives and motivates you daily? What calling you must fulfill? Though his murder makes me angry, we cannot be led by our anger. Acting on anger can be destructive. Acting on anger can lead to actions without thought, and acting on anger can destroy the goal you are trying to accomplish. Let this moment in history give you the passion to fulfill the purpose of being God's child and treating others with love and equality. If you are a person of color, don't let the racism destroy your hope and goals. Let your anger light a fire of passion to be the greatness that you are, that they are threatened by. If you didn't finish high school, go back and get your GED. Tired of living the hustler life? Swallow your pride and consult resources on how to be a legit businessman or woman. Tired of renting an apartment? Take a class on purchasing a home so that you're investing in your own property. Invest in yourself because your success matters. Don't think about your past mistakes and past rejections. None of us have succeeded with every attempt. Now that eyes have been opened all over the world to the racism and disrespectful behavior Black people have received for years, step up like the queen and king that you are. I know life can be a struggle in this brown skin. It is said that God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. My Black queen, my Black king, fix your crown and soldier on. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. Martin Luther King Jr. I am Everett Maxine, and I would like to thank you for listening to The Absence of Her. Please remember to like, follow, and most importantly, share.